What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Jay Bird Watching. I am your host this evening, Adam Corsair, and of course, I am joined by my fellow co-hosts, the two men that make this possible, Mr. Craig and Mr. Brendan Pennicar. Why do you guys laugh when I say that?
Because teamwork makes the dream work, man. It's all three of us.
Why does that sound like two claps and a Ric Flair to start the show?
Let's do it. Guys, I gotta tell you, I've been working from home all week. I could literally get used to this working from home stuff. I kind of like it. I like.
I guess when it's me, then I have to be at the things I need to fix all day, every day. If I'm stuck at home, it kind of just means things don't get fixed.
Yeah, I get you.
You know, the whole turning wrenches and wiring things all day.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, I can't wait until I can go to an office again, even if it's twice a week. I haven't been to an office or worked outside of my condo since March 16. Been at home the entire time.
Although, then again, there is always this.
Hey,
Yes.
that too.
It's
Friday
split.
afternoons, just
Yeah.
open and
Game on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for me, it's flipped. Since this whole thing started, I've been working in an office, and now I get to work from home. So it's more. It's like, oh, this is what the hype's
Big
about.
deal.
I kind of like it, and
It's not bad.
I like it.
It takes discipline, though. I will tell you.
Yeah.
Oh, I just. This is what lo-fi beats are made for. It's just go on YouTube and just chill out to lo-fi beats.
Absolutely.
That's what I do.
Why do I feel like you have like a night at the Roxbury thing going on when you're at work all day?
All day. All
Yeah.
day.
Let's go.
These
Broke the
things might
windows.
they might as well just be surgically put in there, just forever.
Oh, God.
If you ask my wife, she'll say I always have them in. Anyways, let's before we begin the show, Craig, you brought to our attention that we had a listener question, a viewer question on Twitter, actually, asking us about a potential starter. What was the question directly?
The full question was, who has a chance to ever make the Jays full-time as a starter? The choices were Merriweather, Hatch, Kay, and Luciano, and it's from longtime listener sister with a bolter. So,
Craig, why don't you take this one first, man? What do you think?
out of those guys, I would be shocked to see it be Kay and Luciano, honestly. And that's
Agreed.
saying something. I really think that Hatch and Merriweather are really the front runners in that conversation. But a lot of this depends on what the Blue Jays actually start doing with the free agent market. There's really a realistic opportunity for all four of those guys. I do have a strange feeling with being a lefty, and more or less just Luciano being the odd man out. I think he has their bullpen. I really think long term that they might end up that way, but never know.
What about you, Brendan?
Yeah, I think it just a lot depends on what we've seen from them so far. We saw a lot of Luciano in 2019 because he was Rule 5 guy who they picked up. And there's definitely some flashes of potential there. The kid has some good stuff, but he's still pretty far off, I'd say. I know he's had his cup of coffee in the big leagues. I guess more than a cup of coffee, a whole season in the big leagues, other than his injury. But I still think he might be 2 or 3 years off. And by then, who knows what situation he'll be in. I could see him more as a bullpen guy myself. And then if I had to rank the three guys we've seen the most of from 2020, I'd probably go Hatch as number 1, Merriweather's number 2, and Kay's number 3. And that's no disrespect, Bobby, to your brother. But being a lefty, you see it takes longer for lefties to develop. It took longer for Jay Happ to come into his own. It took longer for other guys to come into their own too. So, I think that's the way I'd go. Hatch showed me the most. I think Merriweather showed some really good stuff. But again, maybe he plays better in a bullpen. Go out there in short 1, 2, 3 inning spurts and just strike out the side every single time, which is basically felt like what he did. So, yeah, I'd probably go Hatch, Merriweather, Kay, then Luciano.
Yeah, Luciano, you obviously we all knew the deal was that he was there just so, he would stay on the team. He obviously wasn't ready during that whole stint in the big leagues, but sort of a throwaway year anyway. I have to go Merriweather. I just trust the stuff a little bit more. I think he's got more I don't want to say of a pedigree because that sounds demeaning. I just think he has more of a natural starter kind of build to him, and his stuff just screams starter. And this is no disrespect to Hatch. It wouldn't surprise me either. But long term, I think that's what the question was asking. I can see Merriweather be probably a number 3 at best in the rotation, but it wouldn't surprise me if this season, if they became, injury riddled, knock on death, that doesn't happen, he could slot in as the number 5 starter, and I think it will be just fine.
I'll pick up there and let Borden get all set up.
Sure.
I know he's got an alternate arrangement, but yeah, no. So I think if you think about it in the short term, then obviously Luciano is the furthest away. But I think if you look at it long term, like say 3 or 4 years down the road, then I think Luciano might rise to the top of the list. And that's because eventually, depending on what happens in free agency, depending on what happens in trades, and depending on how good this team is, guys like Kay and Hatch and Merriweather, any of the 3 guys could be used as trade bait. So they could be out of the organization. It's possible Luciano could be used as trade bait too in the more short term, just based on what they saw. But you know what? If he goes up, they saw some stuff in his stint out of the bullpen, but the more he gets it together as a starter in the minors and he looks better and better and better, that's going to be an attractive trade chip in the future. But who knows? There's so many different directions you can go with these young arms. It's exciting. It really is.
Craig, you with us? You're a little muffled. Yeah, we can't really hear you at the moment. Sorry, dude. Well, look. Oh.
Oh, am I better now?
There you go.
It's like I'm back.
Yes.
I had to move to the exec lounge part of my back room here, meaning like 3 feet to my left.
You sound very clear.
It's coming through nice.
Yeah, the Dell laptop's not half bad. It's just I can't believe I can't use my regular stuff.
It happens. Yeah, this is American technology. What are you gonna do?
I declare shenanigans.
Yes.
Hey, that's fine. Shenanigans on the play.
But yeah, I think that, long term, it's Merriweather, you guys inch it towards Hatch. I get it, and I wouldn't be disappointed either way. I just think when it comes to raw ability, raw stuff and just the litany in the arsenal, I think that Merriweather would perform just a little better. I have a little bit more faith, but that being said, you guys want to roll into the first topic?
Let's do it.
Yeah. All right. I first thank you for the question. We appreciate the interaction. We appreciate the listenership, and we most certainly appreciate the questions. If anybody at any point during the show wants to ask us questions live on Twitter, please feel free to do so, and we'll do our best.
I'm watching.
Oh, you're watching us.
Oh, there you go. That's clever.
There's all sorts of typing going on here.
Sweet. All right. Well, if you guys have questions, please let us know. But let's talk about the biggest news, I think, so far in the baseball world, is that the Cubbies are going to blow up the ship. Now, recently, Theo Epstein has stepped down from his role with the Cubs, and it's rumored that the team is willing to deal, quote, almost anybody. I remember sending you this text message to the group yesterday, guys, and I said, it's time to shop, boys. We're going shopping. Is there anyone on the Cubs roster, Craig, that you are looking at and saying, got to get him, that could help us either in the short or long term? Or are there a group of players that you're interested in? Or are you like, nah, Cubs magic is gone. They won the World Series a couple years back. It's not the same. Move on. What say ye, Craig?
That being said, I think the Cubs magic is gone. And I think that is because Theo is gone. They're not going to be able to bring anything in to inject that same level of interest, I don't think. So you're talking about bringing, the new guys in. Yes, he's been there with the team and everything, but he's going to want to rub everything of his own persona on that, just as like what we saw when the Blue Jays current management team moved in. They're going to want to blow it up to the point where they get what they want and build this team back up. These guys, I hate to say it for Cubs fans, because it was so nice to watch them finally win a World Series, and that was such a great team. And yeah, it was just the best story in baseball, and a long time best story in baseball. So to see them nuke that up, it does suck, but I really do think that they need to start thinking in the future here. And what better way to do that by pilfering a plethora of players from a team like the Toronto Blue Jays' minor league organization. We talked about it's crazy extensive on this show with how much we have in the cupboard. And if they go after us, we're going to get something good in the return, regardless of who it is, because there's plenty of talent as Major League ready on this team. And being able to just, pilfer their ready guys to bolster our stuff right now and run to the World Series, this could be really, really good for the Blue Jays. That this is just kind of like the the moon's aligning type of thing. To me, right now, I'm looking at the former MVP and either Chris Bryant or bringing in Anthony Rizzo. Why not go right for their top tier and bring in that captain level of player to match up with this young core, who is obviously going to be the Blue Jays captains of tomorrow or now, whichever way you want to call it. There's that kind of like nice veteran presence to it there. If I had to come down to it, I love the idea of bringing Chris Bryant in because I just think he checks all the boxes for the Blue Jays. You got a third baseman that's solid all day, every day. And guys, I think he gets a rough bit playing in the National League Central. Those are some big ballparks, and that boy hits the ball pretty damn hard. So seeing him play in the American League East could be slightly ridiculous. Those 30 home run seasons could add up to something pretty bountiful for the Blue Jays going forward if he's playing in the American League East.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, I think you look at the potential non-tender candidates here, guys, and MLB Trade Rumors lists 2 Cubs position players. One of them is Chris Bryant. They have a pretty big decision to make with him because the non-tender decision is for at least $18.6 million. It's a big chunk of change in a season where there may be some surprise non-tender. So there's one. And then the other is Kyle Schwarber at $7.9 million. I think you look at those guys who there's going to be some debate in the Cubs organization. Is like, look, if we're going to blow it up and somebody comes to us with a trade offer for one of these guys, I think we got to think about it. So I think those guys could be the most right for the picking. But I think you absolutely go for your top tier talent. Like I'm looking at Kyle Hendricks in the rotation, a guy who recently signed an extension and is still super cheap, under control for I think until 2023 or 2024. And Hendricks has been awesome. Very similar mold to Ryu. They don't throw hard, but they rely on good movement and location with their stuff. And Kyle Hendricks could rival Marco Estrada for the best changeup we've seen on a Blue Jays staff in like forever. Because Hendricks' changeup is every bit as good as Marco Estrada's was. So Hendricks on the pitching side, Darvish is an option. I know Darvish is a little more expensive at 21.5. He's had some injury concerns, but he's really, really steered the ship back in the ace level direction. But there's a little too many red flags at that price point for me. So scary. It is. I agree. It is a little scary with Darvish. He'd be great.
We can get Ryan Tepera back.
Yes.
Yeah, Ryan Tepera. The Cubs have a good roster that are worth going after and calling. And like Bryant's probably at the top of my list for position player, and Hendricks would be for pitcher. And I know we put together trade packages last week for Arenado and Marquez, but let's do it for or think about probably similar trade package molds for Hendricks and for Bryant. A lot of them could probably be very similar guys. So I'm all in on the Cubs.
Yeah, I agree. And, you brought up Darvish. I'd like to stay away from that. I know, there's a little bit of love lost when it comes to Darvish because I remember when he was making his way here, it was heavily rumored that the Blue Jays were going to be the team to sign him. And then I remember
they actually say we did have him.
Something like that.
It was reported by ESPN or The Athletic or somebody that's like, oh, the Blue Jays got him. And then 5 minutes later, oh, by the way, he's heading to Texas.
Yeah. I remember it was kind of a shock. And Texas was sort of under the radar about it. But, that notwithstanding, I don't know how I feel about having a guy that's 34 that's going to command that kind of money. And you're going to have him up until 2023. It would be his last season with the Jays. I don't know. I just think that the longevity is just not there, and I'd rather stay away from that. Hendricks is obviously someone that I'd love to acquire. I think the asking price in terms of trade capital, prospect capital is going to be a little high. Wouldn't surprise me if they're going to want to dabble into some MLB ready or MLB rostered players in return that are on the young side, sort of like we were talking about with Gurriel, perhaps. But Chris Bryant is one that I'm looking at because it's a pure rental, right? You'd have him for 1 year at the third base spot. He can still produce. He's still rather young. He's 28 years old. The contract is, I mean, if you were going to sign, just for the sake of argument, if Chris Bryant was a free agent and you were going to sign him for 1 year, 18.5, sure, sign me up. I don't see that as a high risk at all. And I don't know that because he has just 1 year left on the contract that the trade capital in return is going to be nearly as high. So I'm okay with dabbing into that. I'm sure the Cubs are going to want something of in terms of premium and prospect capital, but I don't know that you're going to demand any major league ready players for a guy like Chris Bryant. Maybe you do, and maybe if I'm the Jays, you sort of walk away because of the rental. I certainly don't think Chris Bryant's the kind of guy that will entertain an extension with the Blue Jays. I don't mean that disrespectfully to Toronto, but if you're going to make a move for a guy like Bryant or Rizzo or Hendricks, that's an all-in move. Especially, I don't foresee this happening. If you can get all three, that is a fucking all-in move, and that is chasing a World Series title. So for me, I think Bryant is the one that is probably the easiest to acquire if we're talking just a rental and for both sides to agree upon a deal. Rizzo is probably a guy that the Cubs are eager to get rid of just because he has also just 1 year left. So never mind, 16 and a half. So maybe you can make a move for both of them and you can, package something of prospect premium in return. And that would certainly propel your team forward, I think.
I got one for you to throw in on both those guys, any of those guys, or Javi Baez, or whoever the hell you want to do in. Throw in Albert Amora Jr. Give us a center
field. That's another one, the non-tender candidate.
That one's somebody that's under control that actually does increase that prospect capital. I think he's arbitration eligible for the next 3 years. I think this is his first one.
Yep.
I recall. But, he's not anything that's super splashy, but that's another center fielder, or go that next step, get as much control with Ian Happ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got a little bit more bat with Ian Happ would be the difference. But the nice thing, I think Almora is going to end up being an igniter. I really think he is going to be that kind of a guy in a lineup, maybe as soon as this year. So it'd be interesting to see what he looks like at the top of our order, maybe with Biggio and Bichette at the top,
Are we looking to acquire guys from the Cubs that's more of a win now? Or do you think the Blue Jays are going to be, if they're entertaining offers to the Cubbies for any of their players, do you think they're looking for players that have control attached to them? Because it's really hard to read this front office and what their intentions are for this coming season, because the attitude, at least prima facie, is that they're saying we want to, push our chips and we want to be aggressive. But does that mean they're going to be eager to acquire rentals? I'm not sure. So are you willing to pay that prospect capital or major league ready prospect capital or major league talent to get people with control? Brandon, what do you say?
Oh, that's tough. Look, I think Bryant could, just on his own, without anybody else attached, could maybe not as high of an asking price as Lindor, like we discussed last week, but it'll come close. It will. Definitely. There's still a lot of value there with Chris Bryant. I know he's coming off a pretty injury riddled and poor 60 game sample size, but so many veterans have. Arenado did. He came off a bad season, and that's not going to mean the Rockies are going to give him away for free. So I think Bryant will command a similar-ish package to the ones that we discussed last week or have been proposed for Lindor. And if they're discussing Lindor and the Cubs are having a fire sale, you might as well discuss Bryant too. And Bryant can play the outfield as well. Like, he has some experience in left field. He could probably play some right field, but I think left is a much easier position for him since he's just going straight back from third base. So Bryant on his own, I would definitely pay for. As I said last week, I'm fine with Lindor as a rental too. There's no guarantee for either of them. So if we're going to dabble in the rental market, I think anybody that's a rental that's good, that can have an impact this season, could be. But again, I think any trade where you're talking Lindor or you're talking Chris Bryant or you're talking any of these guys who are rentals, it starts with George Springer for me. It really does, because that's the move that's going to signal to Lindor and to Chris Bryant, whichever one of the ones you go after, is like, you're going to want to stay here. We just had a reunion this past off season. Now look at, we've added Springer. We've signed 2 big deals in the last 2 seasons, and we're slowly building to a contender. And you're going to want to stay here. So we're going to try and get you in the building and re-sign you. So any big move, any big trade, whatever package they give, for me, it has to start with them getting George Springer in the building.
Craig, I see the steam coming out of your ears.
What? No, it's because there's blood coming off my tongue from playing it so hard. Whatever. You guys all know my George Springer stance. I just don't want any guys infecting my clubhouse. And I think we have an insanely good group of guys here, and that scares me. It really does. It's just a flag to me, and I don't know how much I can until I see it. If I see it, I can't change my mind.
If they sign Springer and you start to change your view on him, I will pay for half of your Jay Springer jersey.
Oh,
not gonna happen.
Okay.
I'm not going to go that far.
For all my sons.
There's not even going to be a Scherzi in my future of that. Just saying.
I don't know, man. If he's the guy that propels this team forward, and that's usually not the case when it comes to baseball. It's usually very much a team effort. But if this is a type of player that can spark some sort of I don't know, get just some lightning for this team, I can see Springer being a guy that would attract trade candidates, even though it's not necessarily up to them, but they chirp in the ears of management and they could say, get me to the Jays, get me to a team that's contending like the Jays. And I think that would signal something, but I don't know.
Same reasons on like why you got guys like Ricky Henderson in '93.
Yeah.
He waived a no trade clause, if I'm correct, from the A's to come to Toronto that year.
There you go.
I can't recall. I feel like there was something like that going on, or maybe it was one of the places that wasn't on his list or something. I don't know. But back to the Kris Bryant thing.
Yeah.
We kind of saw what I think could happen with Kris Bryant this past season. And when everything is going on, we saw this happen with Taijuan Walker. He was happy to be traded to the Blue Jays, but all of a sudden, right when the season ended and he didn't use in the playoffs, everybody was just like, yep, gone. Don't even think about it, right? We've been seeing all over social media that he isn't anywhere near opposed to the idea of coming back to Toronto. And in all reality, it sounds like he would love to come back to Toronto and play baseball.
Yeah.
I could see that same kind of thing happening with Kris Bryant. If you trade for him now, maybe it doesn't take the high-end prospects, because let's just put it this way. If the Cubs are going for a full rebuild, are they looking for prospects that are going to hit in the next year?
No.
2 years?
No.
3 years? No. They're going to be looking at the Aurelvis Martinez and the Gabriel Morenos and all that kind of stuff. They're going to hit in 3 or 4 years, right? So I'm completely fine trading right now for a guy down the prospect line. Yes, they're going to be great players. I really do confidently can say that. But if that's going to get me more this season, yeah, go ahead and give it to Kris Bryant. And I really think that audition for Kris Bryant would completely U-turn, seeing what the goof around level is with him and everything online. Did you guys ever see that video with him getting whiffed by Greg Maddux dressed up as cameraman?
Yes.
The guy he seems like he has that same mentality from what we've seen from Bo Bichette, Kevin Biggio, Vladdy, that core, and he would be such a key piece to that. And I just think he fits the culture of the Blue Jays 10 billion times over. And I think if he got into that dugout, he wouldn't want to leave.
So I agree. I agree that he'd be a very good fit for the squad, especially with the young talent that's on the team. To me, this is sort of no different than Lindor, and you touched on it too. I can't confidently say that he'll stay. Yeah. Right. And if I'm giving up if it's lower level, like single A prospect pool, fine, I'll take the risk. But is Kris Bryant alone going to push the needle for us deeper into the playoffs and capitalize over teams like the Rays and the Yankees? I don't think so. I don't know that gets it done alone. And again, obviously this is based on other moves, but if those moves fall through and don't happen, then it's kind of just fanfare at that point, which is fine. Like it gives people more of a reason to watch the Jays, even though viewership wasn't necessarily even down this past season, given the pandemic. Yeah, it was up. I just think that if you're going to do that, you have to have other moves in place, or that's one of the last moves that you make.
Yeah.
After you've already completed some other trades. I don't know how you feel about that, Brendan.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Again, it's the exact same thing I said. It starts for me with Springer. If it's anybody less than that for the outfield, like a Jackie Bradley Jr., we discussed this last week and maybe even the week before, it's not enough for me to move the needle and be like, I'm comfortable giving up a big package for Bryant or for Lindor if it's Jackie Bradley Jr. But if it's Springer, who's an all-star, superstar level talent who could bat leadoff and hit you 30 home runs and steal some bases, and then you go Bo and then Kevin and Vlad and maybe Lindor, Bryant, like you're looking at 6 to 7 deep. Plus, you're not even into the catcher's range yet. So absolutely, it is dependent on other moves. It'll be interesting to see over the next week or so if the Cubs continue to throw out signals that they are going to blow it up, which team around the MLB goes for a trade package first. And if they were to give up a Baez, or if they were to give a Rizzo to somebody that's not the Jays, and you take a look at the return of what the Cubs are getting, and it is guys that are far off, like you said, Craig, then absolutely go for it. Like, I'm so down. Like, you can start with something a few years down the road, like a Martinez or a Geraldo. Heck, we talked about Luciano. Luciano's a guy who's a piece farther down the road that could be used in a deal like that, and then maybe one of Manoah, Kloffenstein, or Woods Richardson. I'd like to keep Woods Richardson, but hey, in the right deal, Manoah, Kloffenstein, you're out the door.
I think for rental, that's a little much with those two guys.
Something like that, yeah.
But we'll find out. But I to your point, Adam, I don't know. You said you don't know what this does for this coming season. Getting some.
I'm saying that move alone.
Forget who we might be giving up. If you're keeping the major league roster the same, and you put Chris Bryant in this lineup, I don't know if either of you had looked at the rankings for Major League Baseball for the stats for the teams. Period. The Blue Jays were the 7th ranked most runs scored in baseball this year in 60 games. And remember how much bitching everybody was doing that first 2 weeks, how we couldn't drive in the key run. That's a lot of key runs, I think, that Chris Bryant could be contributing to in the sport and the kind of stuff that we have. So that could be the difference in the world. And that's maybe a number 1 ranked, amount of runs scored in a season. So maybe the pitching doesn't become as important if you're just crushing people.
Yeah, fair enough. But all right, let me play devil's advocate, because this popped into my mind when you said that. How much of that being in 7th has to do with playing in Buffalo? And do you think that'd be replicated in Toronto?
Playing in Buffalo anyway.
So you think they'll definitely be playing in Buffalo?
I would be shocked still with everything going on with COVID and cases going up if there's anything but at least a half a season in Buffalo or in any Blue Jay minor league ballpark for that matter. But then the other catch on that whole thing is I don't think that the Rogers Center is a deterrent for offense anything. And if anything, I think the way that Chris Bryant hits hard nose line drives and some just happen to go over the fence.
Yeah.
I think that is going to play wonderfully in the gaps of the Rogers Center and it's letting it hit the carpet and run. I really don't think there's any difference between Chris Bryant in Buffalo and Chris Bryant in Rogers Center.
Okay.
Rest of the team, I'll make the argument that, Rowdy Tellez, I'm sorry, is an MVP if we play in Buffalo. Just saying.
That's what I'm saying. Sell high now.
Yeah. He is awkwardly comfortable in that ballpark, and I'm strangely okay with it.
Yeah.
Look, we're going to see for player recruitment purposes over the next few weeks, the Raptors have applied to the federal government for permission to play at Scotiabank Arena in Toronto. If they get granted that in December or November, then the chances of the Jays playing in Toronto are going up like crazy. Almost a certainty, because you're going to have rapid COVID tests that are available at airports for visiting teams to take when they arrive. They can probably still stay in the hotel. I'm assuming that could be an arrangement that's made to at least to start the season instead of going to some of the other ones. And look, we've got so much positive news about a vaccine lately. It's starting to, the distribution plans are in order. I would probably rank right now in a much more optimistic than I was a few weeks ago that the chances of playing in Toronto have gone up to about 75%. I think it'll get closer to like 95% if the Raptors are granted permission to play in Toronto. So Blue Jays fans, keep an eye on the decision the government makes about the Raptors.
Rhode Island, stand up for your vaccine plan. All right, let's move on. So I want to move on to another possible addition that the Jays can be chasing. And according to Bob Elliott, he's reporting that the Jays are very interested, quote unquote, in Kolten Wong after the deal was turned down. So we can't really define, quote unquote, very interested. I don't know what that means. It could mean, oh, he's on a whiteboard. That means they're very interested in him, or there's a legitimate interest. I don't know, but we can sort of parcel whether or not he's a good fit for the Blue Jays. Now, for me, you guys know I love Cavan. He's my man crush Monday. I'd like to see him as the everyday second baseman, but if you get a guy like Wong, I certainly wouldn't scoff at the idea. So, Craig, do you think that the Jays should be pursuing someone like Kolten Wong, given the fact that the second base position seems to be solidified, at least to me it is, or do you think they're better served shopping elsewhere?
It's shocking to me, but I think this is that same kind of thing that if you have a chance to acquire good talent, you got to take a look at it. And I really would be surprised if there actually is traction to this. I think they have too many other irons in the fire to even jump on something like this, especially this soon. This is a move I think you make if the Cubs don't have a fire sale. The Cubs don't, or the Colorados don't do anything with their guys. Lindor goes away, anything like that. Because I really don't. I know you guys have talked about it too. We don't have a lot of confidence in the free agent market otherwise, right? So these guys like Wong that all of a sudden just became available start to look pretty nice and enticing. But he had a really rough year this year, guys, with injuries and just couldn't really, and he never put the pieces together. But this is a guy who's won a Gold Glove. You know, as much as, like you said, we love Kevin Biggio on this show, but I just know Kevin Biggio is going to play his way in with his bat, and he's going to play above average defense wherever the hell I put him on the field. So if you don't get that outfielder, you go after Wong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you put Teoscar or Grichuk back in right and Biggio, or back in center and put Biggio in right, I think is a better fit for him than left. And you just let the DH spot be that roulette of whoever the hell takes it that day as an extra outfielder or whoever. But I don't, unless they get rid of Grichuk, I don't know how much moving that around even helps. You're just moving the hole around a little bit with adding a ton of defense at second base with this move, because I really don't think Colton Wong's offense is going to be anything different than Kevin Biggio. I really don't. And right now, Kevin Biggio is part of the face of this franchise as far as the young kids go, and I would rather run with him and keep it internal. It's one thing to add that, but I don't think Colton Wong is going to want to jump in free agent-wise to a place where he doesn't have a home.
Right.
That's the other catch of this whole thing. I think he's going to end up, honestly, I think he's going to end up being on the Giants.
I can see that.
Colton Wong's going to land, personally.
Yeah, Colton Wong doesn't push the needle for me too much. If you go look at his Fangraphs page, he's very kind of like Marcus Stroman was when his Blue Jays tenure. One really good year, and it wasn't even really that good. He was above 100 in the WRC plus department, I think both times at 108, so a few points above average. And then the other years he's been below that. Not much. I think the high 80s, low 90s. But at his ceiling those few years, he got similar production from Ryan Goins in 2015. I think he's better than Ryan Goins. I really do. There's a lot of people who are better than Ryan Goins.
Yeah.
But,
he's still got an MLB job, though, and this is the White Sox.
That's right. He's still an organization. But look, Wong, if they signed him, great. If they want him, I think they better act quickly, because, look, this Robinson Cano news with the Mets is no good for the Blue Jays. That's an extra $24 million for the Mets to be able to spend over the next few years. And by the end of Cano's contract, when he comes back, they'll just buy him out, because Cohen wants to win and win now. I think the Cano news puts the Mets in conversations for Colton Wong to play second base. I think it puts him in discussions for Lindor. I think it puts him in discussions for Bryant. I think the Mets are now the Blue Jays' biggest competitors this offseason in terms of who you add because of Cano's suspension. But yeah, Wong won't excite me. I think he's fine. He's had some good offensive years. He can steal some bags, add a little bit of pop, but I don't know where he'll play. Like, he'll play second probably primarily, but he has also gotten reps in the outfield. And who's that sound like? It sounds like Kevin.
Yeah.
Also sounds like David Eckstein to me, but don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Guy.
I will have him one thing on this. He's got his Twitter handle is completely on point. I don't know if you guys knew this, but it's the Juan One.
Not bad.
I thought it was interesting you mentioned the Robinson Cano suspension thing. I think all that the Cano thing just did for the Mets is open up the pocketbook for DJ LeMahieu to play second.
There you go.
Yeah, that's true.
Cohen's going to want to take a shit in the Yankees' front yard, I think, by stealing him. And I don't see that anything other than that. Just throw a brick of money at LeMahieu. He's going to play fine. He's used to the National League anyway. He's only been 2 years removed.
Yeah.
There's only so many new pitchers.
That's true.
Yeah, I don't see this as being a fit. And when I hear rumors about, so far these Jays, quote unquote, very interested in player X, they're rampant throughout these trade, I mean, not trade deadlines, these the free agency and the everything, the rumor mill. I just think that when you see someone that draws interest, that you're trying to draw comparisons or draw conclusions as a player that would fit for the Blue Jays. I don't necessarily see it. And maybe this is just my fanhood bleeding into it when it comes to Cavan, but I just think that your infield's fine the way it is. And if you want to make adjustments for someone like Lindor, then sure. I get the argument, or an Arenado, I get the argument, but I can't make that same sort of constellation for Wong. To me, that just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to sort of have that logjam in other positions, Craig, like you're mentioning. That's a lot of players that you're going to have to maneuver around in order to make this work for a guy that isn't necessarily elite. And I can say that with confidence. He's not elite. So there's
comparing him to Ryan Goins, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, it's to me, he doesn't push the needle at all. It's a good depth piece. It's a good piece to have on your roster if you need it and if you can get it for cheap. But I don't necessarily think this pushes anything, and it creates more problems than I think the Jays really can afford right now. Not in terms of monetary, just in terms of just what their roster construction is like. So for me, second base, if it means Wong or Cavan, keep Cavan, man. I don't even want to mess with that. Just keep Cavan there.
I agree. I think if Wong is your VR replacement, then you are looking pretty good to start the bench. And they've said at the season's end, we need to improve the bench. And I think every Blue Jays fan knows how much of a weak spot the bench was after VR didn't improve it. He didn't. He was terrible. He was a terrible teammate. If Wong is signed, I think he can maybe play as much as VR did, but maybe primarily he is a bench guy who comes in late in games, like Goins did, as better gloves, and maybe Cavan goes off to the outfield for Teoscar as an example. So yeah, if Wong is VR replacement and you look at it that way, then sure, I'm fine with that.
Here's my problem with that VR replacement. I already think we have Colton Wong in our minor league system, and it's Santiago Espinal.
Yeah, I agree. I loved what I saw from him.
I do too.
I think that he's going to be right now. I think if you look at how Colton Wong played last year, Santiago Espinal did that already.
And he has much more upside, I think. And he's younger.
I think he does too.
Yeah.
And he showed some surprising pop near the end of his minor leagues stint with the Blue Jays that year too. So I'm encouraged to see what the hell he can actually do with an actual full-time bench spot, and the fact that he can play second, short, and third. Sign me up. I don't see any reason why he is not on this roster to begin the season outside of some odd thing like Colton Wong throwing a wrench into it or whoever that might be. But yeah, that's my opinion.
Did he pitch a little bit too?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, he did.
Position, but yeah, that's still one of my favorite freaking picture or things on Twitter about the cut four thing for MLB.
Yeah,
always has that position players pitching.
Yeah.
All right, so basically what I'm picking up here, guys, is that we're not buying that there's significant interest, quote unquote, very interested in Colton Wong. We're kind of passing on that.
Yeah, if they do it, whatever. If they don't, okay.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, let's move on. So we touched on potential Shapiro extension before. We didn't know what was going on with it. We were confident that it could happen in the near future. Well, Ken Rosenthal apparently is under the impression that the deal is already done. He recently reported that Shapiro indeed signed a new deal with the Jays, the length of which is unknown. We saw this coming, as I said. The whole baseball world did as well. That being said, I think we can look at Shapiro and Atkins their tenure as Blue Jays management in two different sections. We can sort of branch it out. In the first 5 years, I think it was all about rebuilding the farm. This past year, we got, I think, a little peek to what they're capable of and what their drive is. There's definitely been a paradigm shift as to how they're going to operate. So, Brendan, we'll start with you. Do you think that this paradigm shift is going to continue as a result of this Shapiro extension, and that the ownership of Rogers is now under the understanding, hey, look, now it's time for us to push all in. Now it's time for us to get aggressive, and that there is a mutual understanding in that, and this will actually come to life? Or do you think that even though the paradigm shift, we did see a little bit more aggression in the offseason, or rather during the season of 2020, I'm not confident that he's actually going to push chips in as much as Anthopoulos did. Which side of the fence do you land on here?
No, I do think this is just the beginning of them pushing chips in. Maybe not as quickly as Anthopoulos did, but especially in the offseason. Look, I think this offseason can be very similar to the 2014 offseason where they traded for Josh Donaldson and they gave Russell Martin an extra year, something Anthopoulos never did. I can see that happening, and whether that's signing Springer as your Russell Martin and then trading for Lindor or Chris Bryant as your Josh Donaldson, I could see it being that way. Look, Shapiro said this entire offseason that he wants to see it through, and everybody around baseball's industry are saying, and Ross is gone and Charlie's gone because it seems like all of their deals kind of are starting to align to the end of 2022. Atkins, I believe, is under contract until the end of 2021. Montoyo, as I said, is under contract until the end of 2021 with the club option for 22. So, yeah, I do think that now he's gone. He said, look, we've done what we had to do. We rebuilt. We stocked the farm. Look at all this interest we've had on our team. We're going to be able to acquire these impact players. So we're going to push the chips in. And if we fail to win a World Series in a couple of years, I'm gone.
Yeah. Come on, the best thing he gets to say is we got more ratings and we were not even in the right country.
Yeah.
If Rogers wants to boil it down to that, right? That's the whole media conglomerate fun, right?
Yeah. Yeah. True. Brass tacks.
So, yeah, it's amazing how everything you mentioned there, Brendan, is lining up, and to run with it like that. I think he feels like he's that close to finishing this job, and he just wants to run through it. I really do. And I hope that they get that chance to do everything they need to do this offseason. Because like you said, I don't think it doesn't need to be the all of a sudden just dump everything into the table, for pushing all the chips in. You can just ride what we got and add those pieces. We're making a hedged bet instead of just, throw it all in and hope we get something out of it, which is really what 2015 was, guys. It worked out gloriously. I'll admit that. But come on, that was a sub 500 level team when all that happened.
Yeah.
Or at the All-Star break anyway, right?
Yeah.
We were starting to rise up a little after the All-Star break, and then
Yep.
Birds fly, man.
Yeah, for me, there's a difference between obviously what was going on with Anthopoulos in 15 and to right now, because Anthopoulos, I think, knew he was on his way out. So why not just, to go all in and leave the newcomers with nothing? I understand that's a kind of a shitty philosophy, but I understand also why he did it. Whereas now Shapiro is just sort of coming in again and has a brand new deal with. If you think about it, if this was his first tenure with the Blue Jays, walking into this type of situation is amazing.
Yeah.
Like how you'd be
Just a touch.
Yeah, you'd be all about it. This would be the most in-demand job in baseball if you were running for it. I do think Atkins will follow suit. I think they're sort of a tandem, so I do think they're going to be at each other's hips for the remainder. And we've touched on this before. I don't think Montoyo is the manager of the future. I think he's a bridge manager. But that being said, I do think that right now we're looking at a different sort of philosophical approach that we were sort of yearning for. And it's because the cupboard's full. It's because we have so much prospect capital. The trick now is to be able to lure those free agents in. And again, we talked about the whole COVID thing, about how Rogers are in a very strong financial situation. This may be one of the positive sides of COVID. And I don't mean that any disrespectfully to anybody that, experienced COVID, but I'm saying when it comes to the baseball world, the Blue Jays are in a really prime position right now. And this could be the catalyst to having free agents be like, the money's just not really there elsewhere. And the Blue Jays are offering me a pretty good fucking lucrative deal right now. I could really go for this and really attract those free agents. This has been something that the Blue Jays have been struggling for years. Years we've been hearing about this. The last well-known before Ryu, the last well-known player to sign as a free agent, I would say, was Martin, right? Unless we're gonna have Kendrys Morales be that guy, but I don't see it. But yeah, I think that when you have that sort of opportunity available for you, and you can literally change the name of the foundation of this team. You can be that guy that said, hey, not only did I push this team towards World Series contention, I was able to attract free agents in. No one has really been able to do that. I think that is very, very, very attractive to a guy like Shapiro. And I think given the situation that the Blue Jays are in, how can you not be excited? I do think this paradigm shift is for real. And I think Rodgers is on board with it because they see the success that the Raptors have. They see the push that the Maple Leafs sort of have all the time. It's just hockey being so popular in Canada. I think the Blue Jays want a piece of that pie. And when they got a taste of it in 2015 and 16, I think they want that back for 2021 and beyond.
Bingo.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. The city was all Blue Jays all the time in 2015 and 2016, and even in 2017, because the shine of the 2016 team was still rubbing off on a lot of people. But look, I was thinking about this when you were saying all that, Adam. If they didn't have a GM, and let's say they brought in Dave Dombrowski, how insane would Dombrowski go? Dombrowski would be like, this is the most prospect capital I've ever had to work with. I cleared the farm in Boston. I cleared the farm in Detroit. And those were arguably worse farm systems than the Blue Jays have right now. So
dude, imagine if it was Theo right now.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's a very attractive position. And it's one that Shapiro should see through, because if he does end up leaving in 5 years or 4 years or whenever, and let's say they do win a World Series, he can go back and say, look at the team I took over in 2015. They just missed out on winning the World Series. We patched it enough together in 2016 to make another run. We fell short, so it was time to blow it up. Over 2017, 2018, 2019, and a little bit of 2020, not really. They started pushing the chips in this past year. We built up an incredible contending team to start contending in 3 seasons after the following playoffs, following 2016. And we won a World Series. So the way Shapiro and Atkins have built it is pretty much how anybody should want their team to be built after a core is done. You tear it down, you build it up through good trades, international free agent signings and more, and you push your chips in when it's time to. And look, Ryu was just the start of that. People got to realize that Ryu signing makes no sense long-term over the course of his contract if they don't add more pieces, and they will.
I'm going to push this out there because you actually made it sound like it's great that he's here now, right? And he's going to be here for the next extended future. But, guys, we have the makings of what could be a baseball dynasty.
Yes.
Right now, as far as what is the fire hose of freaking talent throughout this system. And that's all they're doing. You're telling me that they wouldn't want to hang around to see if they hold on to guys like Moreno, Geraldo, and everybody coming up through the minor league system. I think they want to be there when those guys come up. I really do. And it would shock me, honestly, as long as Rodgers and the company is happy to pay them, that they're going to stay. I have a strange feeling that there's something about this team and the way that they're allowed to go about their business and run with things. This could be the Brian Cashman pairing with the Yankees or anything else going on in baseball, or how the fact that, and maybe not on the manager level, but how Mike Scioscia was with the Angels for a million years. It really could be something like that. If you asked me the same question even a year ago, 2 years ago, I wouldn't give you that answer at all. I wouldn't even thought of it. But there is something about the way that they're going about this team that they clearly love and enjoy working on it. And they got all, like Brendan said, they have everything they need to work on right now. And they're going to be able to watch this, this baby bird that they watch growing away from the nest right now and running away with the title, hopefully.
And it's not just that. Thinking about the potential, or rather the aspect of them maybe leaving down the line, you just mentioned it, Craig, the fire hose of talent. It is almost impossible to leave these cupboards bare. It is almost impossible. Think about that.
You would literally have to nuke it.
You would have to. The talent coming in to the team in exchange for the majority of the top level prospects in the system, you would have a fucking all-star team on the Jays. And it wouldn't even be close to what you would be able to get. So that's what I'm saying. Like it's almost impossible to leave the cupboards bare. And if you have that coming in, it makes the team even more attractive to say if Shapiro's like, I've done everything I can, I gotta go. Like
I'm tired of winning. Oh well.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. It is almost impossible because it's so jammed up in the system in a good way. So the fact that they were able to do this in such a short period of time is amazing. And if you can consider that they were able to build it up in such a short period of time, I'm not saying tear it down in an equally short period of time, but how aggressive they can be in a short window. I think we should be confident in that. And I know I give a lot of shit about, we got to acquire this player or this player. Is that pushing us past Tampa Bay? for me, I'm just a dude in the basement, dude. I don't know, but they certainly have their finger on the pulse better than I do. So if they see a window that I can't see, they've seen talent that I couldn't really see. What is this guy? Who's Merriweather? I don't know who that guy is. Who's Espinal? Whatever. And they've turned into players that I'm thinking, okay, there's a legitimate shot they can be for this team that is part of this core, right? So I trust their judgment. If they see a window to contend, who am I to say, no, it's not there?
So 2 things. You're spot on. Second, you got to give your basement a little bit more credit than that. Underground layer.
Okay, that's my layer. Yes.
One more point I want to make on the whole plethora of talent thing.
Sure.
Like I mentioned, this is assuming they draft like shit for the rest of their
right.
10 years. They have added some really good pieces that are already at the major league level in this, and it's just it's endless. It's not even just what we have in the Bo Bichette's, Vladdies, and Biggios, and now having Teoscar or the Espinal that they acquired, or getting the best out of Rowdy Tellez and what we've been getting out of the bullpen guys. You're gonna have the next wave, Nate Pearson and company, and then you're gonna have the Kloffensteins and everybody else after that, and then somewhere you got Austin Martin in there.
Yes.
What the hell is all that? So, what the hell do you do with all this? And like I said, I think it's gonna get to the point where they're either gonna have the lowest payroll in baseball because they just have guys that are arbitration level, and they can just pepper in any free agent they want, or they're going to be able to trade for any player they want because they always have something ready to go. And with the exception of the outfield, they have potential at every position in spades. And maybe some of these guys in the outfield, or if Austin Martin is quote unquote an actual outfield prospect, maybe it isn't as deep or bare as I think. But I will tell you right now, our outfield prospects look a lot better than many, many teams in baseballs.
So, yeah. No, you're right, man. You absolutely are. And look, the waves they've created of talent all the way down to the lowest of low. Look, there's one name that I read the other day in an article that I just completely forgot about. And it's Juan De Paula, because I think he is a guy they got from Kevin Pillar, right? But that guy even has a crap ton of talent because he was the main piece that came back from the Giants, and he's all the way down to like the lowest of low. So they have started to accumulate guys that low, to have guys in 5, 6, 7 years, like you're saying, Craig, come up and continue to be like, okay, here comes some more guys. We're going to lose a few veterans, so they're going to be replaced. And we're going to continue to draft well and trade well, so it'll be stocked for a while. But in terms of the window you're talking about, Adam, it is the Rays that worries me the most over the next few years. The Rays are just as incredible at talent development as the Blue Jays are. They have Wander Franco, who's on the cusps of the big league level, and this guy is hyped up to be even better than Vlad was hyped up to be. So get that on your radar, Blue Jays fans. The Rays are not going away. They really aren't. The Yankees and Red Sox will never go away because they have just endless pocketbooks. But right now, this current version of the Yankees, guys, if you remove Stanton and you remove Judge, both of whom were injured quite often in 2016, the Yankees are beatable. And Gary Sanchez is starting to flame out a little bit. And their infield, other than Urshela, Gleyber Torres had an okay year, but he battled injuries. And then you go Luke Voit, the guy just had a career resurgence this past year. So the Yankees, they're good. Don't get me wrong. They'll always be in the conversation every single year. I don't remember the last time they had a losing season, but the Yankees just don't scare me long-term as much as the Rays do. And it's because as of right now, the way they're constructed, the Yankees are going to need to have a minor little retool or fire sale the next few years because Stanton and Judge well, maybe not so much Judge, but Stanton is getting older. And he's already been incredibly injury prone his entire career. You remove one of those guys, they're not the same Yankees they are when they're both in the lineup. So, yeah, who knows?
This year actually scares me very much for the Yankees. If let's say they do flame out and suck because they don't get LeMahieu, the Judge and Stanton situation that you just laid out, Brendan, happens. I don't know if you guys have looked ahead at what the 2021 free agent market looks like, but it's crazy.
Yeah.
And Red Sox and Yankees could literally rebuild an all-star team by just writing checks.
Yeah.
We've seen them do it before. And it wouldn't shock me if that happens again. I'm honestly hoping they actually do have kind of a decent season this year so that they just don't write the freaking checks.
True.
I think they have enough talent. But I would be shocked, honestly, with the way the free agent market's starting to look around the rumor mill and everything, that if DJ LeMahieu actually comes back to be a Yankee. And he was their biggest contributing force in offense the last 2 years. So,
how often does that work, though, in baseball historically, where you buy a bunch of free agents and you make on paper all-star team and you win the World Series? I remember when the Red Sox signed, who was it? The dude
Johnny
from
Damon. The Johnny Damon year?
No, it was after that.
Oh, wait,
when
he went to the Yankees. Sorry.
Why is his name escaping me?
2004 curse reverse.
I'm talking about the 2010 team, I think it was.
Okay.
That they were playoff. I forget who they had. I think it was the year with Pablo, and it was the year where they signed the dude from St. Louis.
They never should have.
Alan Craig.
Yeah, I think I forget the whole roster, but no, it was regardless. Historically, I don't know that necessarily works out, where you sign a bunch of free agents and you put them on a team and you expect them to win a championship. It definitely works out in basketball, but in baseball, I just don't see it, because at that point you're signing a bunch of high profile free agents. You're signing a bunch of egos, right? I'd rather have the homemade talent. Yeah. And I think that's been proven to work a little bit better, the homemade talent that you can groom in an organization rather than just signing guys.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. Yeah. The only reason I'm even making that comment, the guys that are on the 2021 free agent roster are younger than they usually are.
Yeah.
You're talking Lindor, Correa,
Bryant.
Crap. The list was endless. I'm like, oh my God, this is an all-star team looking at it. And it was every position's loaded. That was what was really scaring me, which in hindsight, let's say the Blue Jays do pass on this year's free agent market and run into next year, they could do the same damn thing. Mm-hmm. They really could. They could. Let's say you do miss out on Springer this year. I can't remember who it was, but I was very impressed with the guys that were available in the outfield. Oh, Corey Seager is another one. Another guy. Center field was Starling Marte is the low end guy. Where the hell is the rest of the outfielders?
I'm curious who this is, Craig.
I had it in front of me and I lost it. But the next year's free agent shortstop market
is crazy.
Is Baez, Correa, Lindor, Seager, and Story. I'm pretty sure if I had to, I could, flip one of my guys to the outfield just to let them pepper my infield if I had to.
By the way, that pitcher for the Red Sox I was thinking of was John Lackey. It was that year that they signed a bunch of free agents, and it just didn't work out.
Right.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't he the only one that actually pitched his way out of a brown paper bag that year for the most part?
Yeah. It was sort of like a lost season at that point. But there was a lot of hype coming in.
The following year, and then they more or less dusted him, didn't they?
I think I think he ended up going to St. Louis.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm with you, and I get that the young talent that might change the game, because you're right, there is a plethora of young talent. And look, if that means that the Red Sox and the Yankees are opening up their purse strings, fine, so be it. I trust the talent that we have right now to sort of overcome that. Maybe that's just me being a homer, could be, but I just trust the young talent that we have. I think having the homegrown coming up through the system. Craig, about the minor league better than anyone. You know that that sort of continuity is good.
Happened this past year. I really do.
Yeah.
I miss it.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it comes back. All right. Well, speaking of drafting and speaking of picking people up, let's talk about Rule 5, and we can end it here. I think that's this Friday, right? Rule 5 draft is this Friday.
I think so.
Yeah. Do you see anybody that's Rule 5 eligible that the Jays should be chasing? Now, I kind of want to temper expectations here, because very rarely does a team get someone off the Rule 5 draft and he's immediately impactful. I think the most recent name that Blue Jays would be familiar with is Joe Biagini, to be someone that was a little bit more than lightning in a bottle, that had an actual presence on the team for the Blue Jays that was impactful. But there are such things as diamonds in the rough. They happen. So, Craig, what do you think? Do you think there's anybody out there that the Jays should be pursuing, or do you think our best bet is the free agent trade market?
I think the best thing that the Blue Jays could be looking for is filling out the bench. I really do. I think if you're looking for those guys that are in that mold of the Santiago Espinal kind of character we were just talking to, that's where you shoot for. But I'm maybe looking for more of an outfielder. If somebody that would pair well with Jonathan Davis, maybe, is kind of what I'm thinking. I don't know who that person is off the top of my head because a lot of the 40-man rosters haven't been solidified yet. They'll probably be, tomorrow evening, like always. It sucks that we're not reporting this on a Thursday show, but to keep our Wednesday 7:00 time slot.
Yep.
I'm more interested in who the heck the Blue Jays are actually going to hold on to because there's a lot of crazy names that have to possibly be protected for the whole 40-man roster. So I can't remember what I was thinking off the top of my head. I gotta look it up.
I got the list here. Bluebird Banter put this one out, and they bolded some of the bigger names. So I'll only go over the bolded names. There's Riley Adams, Maximo Castillo, Otto Lopez, Gabriel Moreno, Kevin Smith, Samad Taylor, Ty Tice, Josh Winkowski, and Chavez Young.
Yeah.
Those ones that they have bolded. There's a few names that aren't bolded that are quite interesting too. Some that caught my eye when I went through there, guys. Kyle Johnston, who they got from the Nationals in the Daniel Hudson trade. Whatever. Cullen Large, a guy, Craig, I know you brought his name up last week or 2 weeks ago. Zach Logue, a guy who made it to AAA in 2019. Another pitcher who kind of falls in that Zoik, Winkowski, Joey Murray kind of mold, who may have a nice little future, but is not like the upper echelon of arms. Ryan Noda, Graham Spraker, I know he's been touched on before, and Logan Warmoth, a guy who the front office was huge on a few years back, who's kind of fallen out of favor a little bit lately, it seems, but they have some tough decisions, guys. There's going to be some really good players out there for other teams to claim, and I think that's just a sign of how good the system is. You can't protect and keep everybody, so a good arm is going to go, and we saw that with Romano. It's a miracle we got him back. Texas and the Giants, I think, too, right? And then there was another, Travis Bergen, who eventually got flipped for Bobby Rowe. So, there's definitely going to be somebody that's taken. I guarantee that. It could be Logue if he's not protected because he got close to the bigs in 2019.
Yeah. I think the most interesting one is Kevin Smith. This is them to see if the Heat – do they see him being the prospect that they thought he was 2 years ago?
No.
This guy ran through the bottom. He looked like Bo Bichette playing in Lansing. I was literally sitting in the stands watching the game with Jesse Goldberg Strasslers. He was nice enough to come down and visit me for the one inning that he takes a break. And we were sitting there chit-chatting and whatnot, and Kevin Smith literally just destroys a pitch over the left field wall. And it was just one of the craziest things to watch. We were talking about him before his at-bat, who I might have liked and who he was, keen on watching every night. And that was what happened. And the other part of that was watching some of the other guys. I'm trying to think of the pitcher. He pitched for the Blue Jays in like one game 2 years ago.
That's not going to help, man.
Yeah.
That's right. It was everybody that year. Anyway, I'll think of it eventually. But I just, do you trust Kevin Smith to be that good, or do you expect him to fizzle out? So right now they have to pick if they expect him to be that future player, because it really would not shock me that somebody would take a flyer on him on this year's Rule 5 draft, because he is close and his defense is solid. So worst case scenario, guys, he could be on somebody's bench. So I don't see anybody having a problem keeping him on the Major League roster for a whole season. And maybe that's what the Blues thinking about doing. Maybe he's the pair up with Santiago Espinal that I was mentioning we might be shopping for. So there's that argument. Do you want to rather keep him, or would you rather look elsewhere?
Yeah, it's a good point. I think in hindsight, if the team knew what Smith would be just a year or two after they were really hyping him up, would have traded him. I think he and Warmoth are very, very similar. They both were the talking points of State of the Franchise, or no, not State of the Franchise, Winterfest a few years ago. I think it was 2018's Winterfest, or maybe even 2019's Winterfest. I remember we had a podcast episode. I think you might have been our guest, Adam. And we touched at length on Warmoth and Kevin Smith about how excited we were about them and just how they've kind of fizzled out since then, because I don't even think Warmoth will be protected, and I could see him staying in the organization. But I think they probably will have to protect Smith. But there's a lot of tough calls in there, man. There is.
Yeah, for me, it's look, we were just talking about how I wouldn't say jammed up, but how rich the prospect pool is. I'm not necessarily concerned with any of the players coming out. Now, of course, you don't want to see talent that is robust, on another team and thrive. You don't want to see that. But at the same time, I think the Blue Jays are in a good position that if there was any year that they can sort of, I don't want to say scoff at it, but say we're going to be okay. I think this is one of those years. So again, if there's anybody coming into the organization, Craig, I agree with you. We're just looking for bench fodder at this point, and maybe not anything that we think would be here long term, and maybe not someone that it might not be anybody that we hold on to for the whole year. And I think you're going to see a lot of that. But in terms of coming out, yeah, I was pretty surprised to see Kevin Smith's name on there. I know that he's been highly touted, at least previously, for quite a bit, and it sort of fizzled out. So I'm not really too concerned. And again, that might be just signaling my ignorance when it comes to the minor league system. But I just think we have the guys that we know will thrive with this organization. And I'm not necessarily sure 100% that the names that we're mentioning are part of that. I could be wrong, and that might be me misreading it. But this is one of those years that I'm not necessarily concerned.
No, I agree. And look, eventually you're going to have to clear out some prospects because there's not going to be a home for them.
Right.
It's just as simple as that. You can keep as many as you want, but then they'll be out of jobs or they'll become bench players or bullpen arms. So I agree. I think your evaluation there, Adam, is pretty spot on.
I got a curious one for you. Gabriel Moreno has a chance to be basically Elvis Luciano for the baseball team.
I could see that.
20 years old. He would be the youngest guy, just like Luciano would be, or pretty damn close to it. Are you protecting him with the plethora of catcher talent that we already have on our 40-man roster? Or, just to play devil's advocate here, do you hurry up and trade somebody like Reese McGuire for a flyer before the end of the week just so you get a minor league guy back and not have to worry about it?
But if we're talking about a guy like Moreno, do you think that he would be able to survive on a team as a catcher? That's a tall ask for a whole season.
As a backup, maybe, is the only thing I can think of. And it would be for a team that would be a bottom feeder, I would think.
Yeah, like a Baltimore or something.
Yeah.
And in all reality, Baltimore actually probably would take a risk on somebody like, because it's the guy's ceiling is literally and from what I haven't seen him because of the minor league stuff going on, but all the tape I've seen, his defense looks like it might be on point enough to take a flyer on him for a backup catcher to be paired with whoever, Caleb Joseph.
Yeah.
For the season, and you got some guy that's literally going to eat up 80% of it, and you got him just to be there on the roster. Learn from somebody like that, because that's the problem with the catching position. If Moreno paid any other position, no team would probably make a flyer on him. If he was a bullpen arm or a catcher, which he is, that's where I'm worried about it. And with him being such a talent, that's really the only thing that worries me, because it's a really odd situation for somebody that young to even be held out on even having the opportunity to be in the Rule 5 draft. And it's because the Blue Jays have had him in the system since he was 17?
Yeah.
So
do you think, I'm pretty sure we all agree that we know what Reese McGuire is. He's probably not going to be more than what he is right now, right?
Dump him.
Yeah. So at that, how opposed are we to just releasing him?
I honestly would DFA him right now and see what the hell happens, because he isn't showing me that he can run away with even a backup job right now. So
if you can't get anything from him by
Friday, right now at a minimum, it wouldn't shock me that Kirk, if you had to solidify and you made this move right now just to get that 40-man spot for Moreno, Kirk would be the backup catcher to start the season. And that there's definitely certainly worse ways we could be doing our backup catcher spot without adding somebody like we've been talking about previously.
Right.
But right now on paper, 40-man roster, that would be how you would have to shake it out, because you're not gonna sell low on Kirk by trading him right now unless he's in a package or something. And the odd man out is full on Reese McGuire right now.
Yeah. I agree. I get rid of him to open up a 40-man spot, or somebody just open up the spot to keep him. because I still do think that Moreno is one of their best trade chips moving forward. And if they do want to make a trade at the deadline or this offseason, I think you need him in there because your catching depth wouldn't take that much of a hit because you might still have Riley Adams in the system. You still have Jansen, assuming you're not going to trade off the Major League roster, and you still have Kirk. So Moreno is probably your best trade chip from the catcher position. So I find any way to keep him here because I do think, Greg, you're right, a bottom feeder is going to pick him up. I can see bottom feeders picking up arms like Logue or Winkowski, I think is another name that needs to be protected. I can see a team like the Marlins or the Pirates just being like, look, Zach, go out and pitch and you will be here next year. No matter what you do, how bad you are, we're not contending. So we can do whatever we want with you. Start a few games, throw out of the bullpen, do whatever you got to do. We'll keep you here. And I think a team could do that with Moreno. Just keep him as a backup primarily, play him in a few games, and get enough production out of him to be like, yeah, okay, great, you're here for the foreseeable future.
I think you just hit the biggest wild card period. Ben Cherington. Or
yeah, that's true.
I didn't even think of
he
that.
knows the system like the back of his damn hands, and now he's looking to rebuild the Pirates. So either he's going to be looking to pilfer us with some of his guys that he likes in trade, or he's just going to be sitting there going like this. Come on, do it. I dare you.
Yeah. If there's a way to bet on the Rule 5 draft and get so intimate, bet on the Pirates taking a guy from the Jays. Do it.
Yeah,
that's true. And more to your point, Craig. Do I feel super confident with Jansen leadership with Kirk as the backup? No. But do I feel super confident with Jansen and McGuire? No. And I feel more I feel more confident with Kirk, oddly as that may sound, than I do with McGuire. So at that point, I don't know that he has a future on this team, and if he doesn't, him. But if it means
getting something for him,
you're getting
a young prospect.
Yes.
So that's how you gotta. I think they have to be attacking that problem. But
knock on desk, as the saying goes.
I like some wood here.
Yes. All right, guys. Well, that's gonna do it for today's show. I appreciate everybody interacting with us and watching. If you have been on Twitter, if you are listening to the podcast feed. Oh, we did. Oh, we eclipsed 100. So if you are listening to us on the podcast feed, we appreciate. Oh, okay. We appreciate you tuning in. We appreciate the subscriptions. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all the podcast catchers that you indulge in. We are there. And if you want to catch us live on video, you can do so, I guess, every Wednesday. We're doing this every Wednesday evening around 7 p.m. on the Twitter, on the, what is it, Kscope? I don't even know what it is. But we're on Twitter. So you can find us on Twitter.
At Birdwatching GC.
Yes. Birdwatching GC. And guys, we're going to end this the way we normally do. 2 claps on Ric Flair and a let's go Blue Jays. Let's do it.
Woo! Let's go Blue Jays. This other one's too far away.